So what's going on with the watch market? Trump is taking office, China has seen the luxury market slow down, and Swiss exports are the lowest they've been in quite a few years. Let's get into it. So as the watch market has been on a decline for the past 2 years, the first thing to do is to really understand what moves the watch market needle. And for that, there are some fundamentals. So these fundamentals include defining the buyer, defining the time frame, defining the location of sale, defining positive growth and negative growth in the market. So let's get into that. So defining the buyer. Which buyers actually affect the market? Anyone with multiple thousands to spend on a watch, so world over, the top 1%. If we're looking at the US, then that's probably top 20% or top 10%. Defining the time frame. When exactly someone buys a watch? When they've got more disposable income, or if they've been saving for something, or to celebrate a certain achievement. But all of this only takes place if other investments are also good. Defining the point of sale / location. Where do people buy watches? So it's mostly at retail, but for the brands that we're talking about in the watch market, they have very little available at retail. So the big brands that actually move the market. So then you look into secondary markets, gray market, sometimes pre-owned, and then you have independent dealers there. And then you have platforms like Chrono24 and eBay. Now, how do we define a growing market cap in watches? Well, if the average sales price of a watch in the market goes up, then the market cap also increases. So when is there negative growth or a market crash or correction like we've seen for the past 2 years or so? Either there's more supply in the market, ADs could be stocked with more watches because of production increases, or buyers lose faith in the market. So all the investors dumping watches, that's a sign of them losing faith, and that could also create a drop in the market by increasing the supply at the end of the day. Despite watches being Veblen goods individually, so luxury goods, as a whole, the market has some parallels with the stock market. Now let's get into extrapolating the implications of Trump's presidency on the market. So I want to take a look at 3 things under Trump's presidency, and these are interest rates, taxation, and trade tariffs. Now interest rates, you may say, okay, the president doesn't directly influence the interest rates. The Fed decides that, and that is very much the case. Trump wants the Fed to provide rate cuts. They've just done one, but he wants them to continue to do that. And that is a little bit uncertain because of his ideas of spending and taxation. Lower interest rates would mean more money to spend for the average consumer, but I don't think the person utilizing this would use that to spend it on watches. So I don't think it directly plays a role. Indirectly, you can make the argument that people are more casual with their discretionary spending if they know that they have access to low interest rates. I think that's kind of far-fetched in the grand scheme of the watch market, so I wouldn't place too much importance to that. Something more important is taxation, so corporate tax cuts. So currently the TCJA is in action, levying a corporate tax rate of 21%. Under the Trump campaign, there's a proposed amendment to that to bring it down to 15%. That's a significant difference. At its face value, this would be a huge win for corporations and highly skilled individuals, so the top 1%. So this should trickle down to the people buying the watches that move the needle of the market. So the top 1% are the ones that are really influencing the watch market. But that's not the end of it. There are some more factors that might play a larger role, like trade tariffs. So in terms of trade tariffs, Trump proposes an across-the-board tariff of 10% on all imports. Swiss watches would be affected, causing a spike in retail prices. This could be more than 10% as brands already have incremental retail price increases. As we've seen with Omega, as retail prices go up, grey market prices go up as well. Long gone are the days of getting a Speedmaster Moonwatch at $3,500 US new on the grey market. The bigger news in terms of tariffs relates to China, and that's a proposed 60% rate on all goods coming from there. Now, this would directly affect the American consumer, not just the Chinese market. The idea is to bring manufacturing back to US, but there's a lot of things that US can never produce and will definitely need to import. So if this is applied across the board, the American consumers will simply pay more for the same stuff. There are estimates of this leading to over $2,600 in household spending. What I'm hearing is your watch budget just reduced by $2,600. So 2 micro-brand watches, they're not coming to your collection anymore. But that's kind of a non-issue with regards to really high-end watches because people buying them would see a disproportionately higher benefit of lower corporate tax. So next we get on to the Chinese luxury market. This is probably the most important factor within the watch market. the Chinese luxury market has really slowed down. The property market crisis that has impacted the country since 2021 has made consumers severely curtail their spending in the luxury market sector. Every brand, except for Hermes, is struggling to move products. And this slump in demand is not due to fading interests or new trends. This is clearly evidenced by the reports of a booming secondary market for pre-owned goods. Here, you may find yourself asking the question, hey, aren't watches kind of the secondary market and pre-owned market? Why isn't that booming? Well, the market that's booming is stuff way below retail because retail is too expensive. So this doesn't really influence watches selling above retail. Chinese consumers are also making a lot of their luxury purchases outside of China because Western brands heavily take advantage of the Chinese luxury interests and make their pricing a lot higher there. So it makes a lot of sense for them to travel, maybe go over the border to Hong Kong, go to Japan, go to any Southeast Asian country because it's nearby, or even Europe, the States, and buy their luxury stuff there and bring it back home. This is kind of evidenced by the fact that China has been opening up a lot of duty-free stores as well. Now this brings us on to data behind all of this, and that comes from Switzerland and their exports. So Switzerland, the heart of the watch industry, is struggling at the moment because exports have dropped 12.4%.
So this data is year on year, and if we take a look at October, there's only a 2.2% decline compared to 2023.
Watches above 3,000 francs, so most of the watches that move the watch market, have seen only an annual contraction of 7.3%.
And in the month of October, it has actually increased, so it's no longer a contraction, but an expansion of 1.7%.
So that would mean that higher end watches are still being exported at a better rate than in 2023. What's interesting to me is that if we take a look at the breakdown based on watch material,
solid precious metal watches are the most affected in September and least affected in October.
So the solid gold and platinum watches, these are down 23.5% in units sold. But the average price has clearly gone up, as the monetary change is only a 9.1% drop. The average price of a precious metal watch has increased to about 25,000 francs. This is the export price, not exactly the retail price. I do not know what the discrepancy there is, but I'm assuming retail's more. Now, what's even more interesting is the difference in two-tone watches.
In the month of September,
there's been a drop of only 2.3% in export value compared to the reduction of 16.6% in units.
What's more interesting, although, is October, where there's a 20% decrease in units sold, but a 0.6% increase in the overall revenue.
Steel is doing pretty terrible though, a 21.1% drop in units and 19% drop in export value.
Interestingly, October reflects a change of 9.2% in units and 7.6% in value.
In the past year, I'm quite sure retail prices across the board have gone up on an average of more than 2%, so this would actually be worse in terms of average sales price. In terms of markets, China, one of the biggest watch markets, has seen a 50% drop, along with Hong Kong at 35%
for September, and in October, negative 40% and 15% respectively.
Also very significant. And for the size of Hong Kong, its market is quite large, almost close to that of UK. This is clearly why the watch market has taken a hit. It really relies on the Chinese market.
The most interesting data here, however, comes from Japan. So in September, it's a 2% increase, but in October, it's a 20% increase.
The US, however, leads as the biggest watch market in the world. And that's why brands are really focusing on that market now. And also, it has seen a small growth and not a contraction. So if Trump's tariffs work out to be remotely close to the lines of what he stated, then I would expect the volume of watches exported to drop and the average value to go up. Switzerland has been exporting less and less units on the regular. Steel watches have particularly contracted, although I think that's partly because Swiss companies are deciding to send out less steel watches, not because of demand. With issues in the Chinese market, they're probably going to focus on other growing markets like Japan, India, and the States. In terms of Europe, Germany just imploded and barely dodged recession this year and might not be able to do that once again next year. In the short term, I expect things to continue the way they are. We haven't yet seen Trump take office. We haven't seen those tariffs in effect yet, so we'll need to wait for that. So the question really is, how long will these current surplus stock levels remain before there's a massive shortage, particularly with regards to steel watches because there's so few being exported out of Switzerland? Additionally, because of the fact that Switzerland is exporting so many fewer watches, they are also being forced to cut production. It's not like they're producing these watches and letting them sit. So companies are actually deferring their orders to a longer timeline. This has already been taking place for a while. The market, however, continues to drop at the moment because it's still running on these surplus stock levels. So with continuous reduced production from Switzerland, one can speculate that there's going to be a point of massive shortage. And when we hit that, there's going to be so much demand that the market must pick up. The thing is, you can't predict exactly when. But if we look at all the factors we have until now, we know that Americans, the wealthy Americans, the ones that are already wealthy, the top 10%, 20%, are likely to have more disposable income. There's a growing American watch market, whereas other markets are not. There's reduced supply because of reduced production and reduced exports from Switzerland. But there's also currently a slowing watch market because of the surplus that's already there. To me, all of this indicates a possible point where supply runs out while Swiss brands are on their lowest production numbers. On paper, this would mean a sudden uptick, but if the European market and Chinese market is dropping all these watches, they would just be sent to the growing markets, so America and Japan, for example. And the rate of this happening can't really be predicted. So that's why I can't confidently state that, yeah, because of low supply, low stock, low production, we are going to have an uptick in the watch market. I can only speculate that this makes sense. It makes sense that at some point of time, we will have that uptick, but it really depends on existing stock and where in the world this stock is, and whether it's being sent to a growing market or whether it's not, and whether the other markets that have been receding stay the same or also start growing. But to me, if the Chinese market recovers, then I think we could quite possibly see an uptick in the watch market. What do you think are the biggest factors here? What factors would you discount? Put it in the comments below. See you in the next vid.